People who work the front desk at hotels tell us a tale. Working the hotel front desk, I had just finished checking in a friendly couple. The lady waiting behind them approached with a warm smile. She asked about my day and mentioned she needed a room for the night. She lived in a nearby town, she explained, and wanted a room with a nice view. Then her voice softened. Her father had just been diagnosed with cancer. He was starting chemotherapy tomorrow. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am," I said gently. "I can see what we have available for you." She pulled her sunglasses from the top of her head down to cover her face. Her voice trembled. "I just need a night to myself before I tell my kids. He's the only father figure they ever had." Her story touched me deeply. I shared how my grandfather had died of cancer when I was young. While we talked, I worked to find her the lowest possible rate. It was a slow week, and I planned to upgrade her to our best room at no extra charge. I love making someone's day better when I can. Our hotel isn't cheap. Even with every discount I could apply, the rate came to just under $200. Still, that was much better than the usual price, about $150 less than she'd have paid during our busy season. I started telling her the price, about to explain the free upgrade I had planned. "Almost $200? She cut in sharply. "Are you fucking kidding me? I could take my kids on vacation for that much?" I froze, completely caught off guard. She raised her hand dramatically. "Yeah, you look so busy right now." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I tried to explain. "I'm not a manager, but I've applied every discount possible. I was going to move you up to—" "Fucking ridiculous," she scoffed, spinning on her heel and storming out. I stood there, absolutely flabbergasted. Story 2. It was 15 minutes before my shift ended at the hotel. I was chatting with our maintenance man about the local comedy club nearby. We were looking up performers on their website when something strange happened. A man suddenly appeared at the front desk. Neither of us had noticed him approach. He was standing right in front of us, though I hadn't seen him at first. Being short, my computer monitor blocks a lot of my view. "What famous guy did you say you're surprised she doesn't know?" he asked abruptly. Then he grinned. "I bet she knows me. I'm really big." The maintenance man and I exchanged worried glances. We hadn't seen anyone close enough to overhear our conversation. How long had he been listening? The man was a guest attending our hotel's gala that evening. Something seemed off about him. We later learned he'd only had 2 drinks at the bar. Our guess was he'd mixed alcohol with Xanax. He asked about nearby nightlife spots since our bar had closed. A normal question, but something felt wrong. When we suggested some places, he zeroed in on me. After I mentioned visiting a karaoke bar with my boyfriend, his questions took a disturbing turn. "Do you and your boyfriend have children?" he asked. When I said no, he immediately asked if I wanted to be his child's stepmother. I firmly declined. Our maintenance man stepped in. "Look, buddy, she has a boyfriend. She's not interested." The man turned to him, asking if he was my boyfriend. When told we were just co-workers, he made an unsettling comment about beautiful people working in the hotel. When my shift ended, I warned our front desk supervisor about the man's behavior. He brushed it off with a casual, "You always get the weird guys." No help there. As I was leaving, I overheard the man telling our maintenance worker that he needed to go home with someone tonight. Something about his tone made me wait inside for my boyfriend instead of meeting him in the parking lot as usual. When my boyfriend texted that he'd arrived, I headed out to his truck. That's when it happened. My boyfriend's expression changed, staring at something behind me. I turned to find the man standing just a foot away, staring intensely at my boyfriend in the driver's seat. I jumped into the truck, slamming the door. As we drove away, we could see him in the rearview mirror, watching us leave while pulling out his phone. My boyfriend was furious when I told him about the supervisor's lack of action. I called the hotel right away to report what happened. Finally, something was done. The man was kicked out and banned from returning. We later learned he'd been harassing our female bartender all night too. It was the first time I'd ever seen someone get permanently banned from our hotel. I still wonder why it took following me to the parking lot for action to be taken. Story 3. It started like many nights at the hotel front desk. A guest had booked through a third-party website, what we call an OTA. She arrived with her dog, which was fine. We welcome pets. Our fee is just $25 plus tax, coming to $26.50. Pretty reasonable, right? This fee is clearly listed everywhere. Our website, all booking sites, everywhere. The woman approached my desk and mentioned her dog. Standard procedure. I asked for her ID and credit card. But I already paid for it, she protested. Those words always make me cringe. You did pay for the room, I explained calmly. I just need the card for incidentals and the pet fee. Her eyes widened. What pet fee? They didn't mention any pet fee online when I booked. Actually, it's listed right on the booking site you used, Excretia. It's clearly stated on their page. No, nobody told me about that, she insisted. You are ripping me off. I waited patiently until she asked about the amount. When I told her $26.50, you'd think I'd asked for her firstborn child. That's ridiculous, she exploded. I kept my voice steady. That's our rate. You're welcome to stay somewhere else if you prefer. Well, do other hotels here take pets? No, they don't. I want a refund. I'm sorry, but you booked through Excretia, not us. It's their non-refundable reservation. She finally agreed to pay, but then came the credit card machine drama. The screen lit up but didn't show the charge amount, a common issue with third-party bookings. There's no price on here, she complained. I explained she'd get a receipt in the morning, but that wasn't good enough. Then it happened. She started slamming her credit card against the machine, punctuating each word. I said there is no price on the screen. That's when I'd had enough. I raised my voice. That's enough. You can either insert your card or stay elsewhere. She froze, stared at me for a moment, then quietly inserted her card. The rest of her stay? Didn't see her again. Sometimes you have to match their energy to get through to them. The funny thing is, the pet fee is listed everywhere except that machine. Every booking site, every contract, every form they sign. It's all there in black and white. But some people just want to create drama where there isn't any. You know what makes it even better? Every transaction gets recorded and reviewed. It's not like we could overcharge people even if we wanted to. But try explaining that to someone who's already decided you're the villain of their story. Story 4. A lovely older woman approached my front desk, her beautiful gray afro catching my eye. She was here to check in under our employee rate reservation. The morning authorization hadn't gone through, so I asked for a new card. No problem there. Then came the ID check. That's when things got interesting. The ID she handed me had the right name, but the photo? That was definitely not her. Not even close. This was someone much younger, completely different person. Is this person with you? I asked carefully. Oh no, she's 3 hours away. 3 hours away and without her ID? She smiled like this was perfectly normal. Oh no, this is just an old ID. I always show this at the front desk when she makes reservations for me. Let me count the problems here. First, employee rates are for employees only. The person named on the reservation must be present at check-in. Second, there wasn't even another name listed on this booking. And third, who in the world has been letting this woman check in using someone else's expired ID? When I explained I couldn't check her in, she broke into the classic guest anthem. I've never had this problem before. Turns out the ID belonged to her daughter. She called her right there and handed me the phone. Now I got to hear the daughter's version. I always make reservations this way. I explained patiently that there's actually a proper way to make employee reservations for family and friends. It just needs to be done through the app. The daughter tried this while we were still on the phone, but guess what? The reservation still came through in the daughter's name, now as a super employee rate. I'm sorry, I told them both, but I still can't check this in. Cue the scowls, more verses of their complaint song. I could practically hear the bad review being composed in their heads. The mother finally made a new reservation, in her own name at regular rates, double what she would have paid with the employee discount. I think they expected me to feel guilty, but honestly, all I could think was, who are these front desk agents letting people check in with someone else's expired ID? Some rules exist for a reason. Being you when you check in? That's definitely one of them. Story 5. For 2 weeks, one of our hotel luggage carts had been missing. It was like it vanished into thin air. The last person to see it was our maintenance guy, who'd left it in a hallway instead of returning it to the lobby. We were all puzzled. After all, who steals a luggage cart? Today, we finally solved the mystery. It turned out a guest who was already on our do not rent list had managed to sneak back in. He'd had his girlfriend check in for them, cleverly avoiding detection. Our maintenance guy happened to spot the missing cart in their room, and my coworker volunteered to retrieve it. She'd already had a run-in with the girlfriend earlier and was, shall we say, eager to settle the score. But nothing could have prepared us for what we found. They'd turned our luggage cart into a dog bed. You heard that right, a dog bed. The cart was so covered in fur that my coworker had to use my lint roller to clean it because the vacuum couldn't handle it. The smell was so bad I had to bring Lysol from home just to make it usable again. The story gets better. These guests had also smoked in the room and completely trashed it. No surprise there. The man had landed on our DNR list for turning one of our rooms into a meth lab during a previous stay. You can imagine what kind of shape the room was in. But here's the kicker. After all this, the girlfriend had the nerve to come back asking for her deposit. My poor coworker had to deal with that conversation too. Then, later that day, she tried to book another room. Thankfully, we have a group chat where my coworker was keeping us updated with live messages about the whole situation. As much as I felt bad for my work bestie dealing with this mess, reading her play-by-play updates had me crying with laughter. Sometimes you just have to laugh at the absurdity of it all. And yes, I did have to buy a new lint roller. Some sacrifices are worth making for the greater good of hotel security. Story 6. At our small, pet-friendly hotel, we keep things simple. The pet policy is straightforward. $75 covers up to 2 pets for your entire stay, non-refundable. Keep them leashed, keep them out of the breakfast area. Basic stuff. When guests are pleasant, I'm usually flexible about minor things. A well-behaved pet off-leash? I'll look the other way. But that pet fee at check-in? That's non-negotiable. Around midnight, my last check-in of the night arrived with a French bulldog. The dog was off-leash, but I started with our usual welcome. Just to let you know, I said, there's a single $75 pet fee for keeping your pup here. I can add it on with check-in. The guest's response came quick. He is emotional support dog, don't need the fee. Unfortunately, emotional support animals are charged the pet fee same as any other pet, I explained. Only service animals are exempt. His tone shifted. Yes, then he is a service animal emotional support dog. Same thing. I won't be paying an extra charge. What now? I kept my voice steady. Sir, they're not the same thing. You already told me your dog is an emotional support animal. I'm sorry, but the charge will have to stand. I've been to several 5-star hotels, he countered. They did not charge. This has never been a problem. I cannot speak for those other locations. Like I said, this is per our pet policy. You're welcome to discuss it with the manager when she arrives tomorrow morning. You best believe it, he huffed. This is ridiculous. He is a support animal. While we had this conversation, his supposedly trained service animal was exploring everywhere, trying to get into the back office, wandering behind my desk. Sweet dog, very cute, but about as well trained as a tennis ball. I handed over his room key and he walked away grumbling to his companion. Look, I understand the importance of emotional support animals. They provide real comfort and help to many people. But trying to upgrade your emotional support animal to service animal status mid-conversation? That's like getting caught wearing borrowed clothes and insisting they're yours. Some people, when caught bending the truth, just keep bending until it breaks. At least the dog was adorable. Story 7. Picture this. I'm at the front desk, a line of 4 people waiting behind my current guest. It should be a quick interaction. "Can I add my member number?" she asks. "Of course, whenever you're ready." She pulls out her phone, and that's when time starts moving like molasses. "Is this a Sweariton hotel?" "No, it's not. I need an IHB number." "The signal in here is terrible. What's the Wi-Fi?" Another guest joins the line. 5 people now waiting. "It's not letting me connect. Oh, there we go. Now where did I put that member app?" The minutes tick by. "Ah, here we go. My number is blah blah blah." I type it in. Nothing. "That didn't pull anything up. Let me read it back." "Yep, that's the right number. I've been a super shiny member of Chariot Hotels for years." 6 people now standing in line, all wearing expressions that could curdle milk. "Ma'am, once again, this is an IHB hotel. I can't use that number." "Okay, well, I guess I'll just find it later and call you." Finally, she moves along. You know what amazes me? How some people can stand there fumbling through their phone for a completely unnecessary member number while a line grows behind them and act like they're the only person on earth. I'd die of embarrassment if I held up that many people just to search for a rewards number, especially one from the wrong hotel chain. Sometimes I wonder if some folks think hotel lobbies are their own private living rooms. Story 8. Let me paint you a picture of my 4 months as a front desk agent. In that short time, I've experienced more trauma than in my entire 25 years of life. Physical assaults, verbal abuse, sexual harassment from intoxicated men, I've seen it all. I've had to call the police 6 times. Most cases involved aggressive guests, but one particularly disturbing incident involved a man who broke into our pool and exposed himself to children. I should mention, I'm not a small person. Standing 6 feet tall and built like a linebacker with years of martial arts training, I know how to protect myself. 3 days ago, I needed those skills. I was working the desk when a regular guest, let's call him Mr. Buttface, walked in. He'd recently violated our strict no-smoking policy, landing himself on our do not rent list. The moment he entered, I knew this wouldn't be pleasant. Though he'd always been polite before, his demeanor changed instantly when I explained he couldn't stay. He started shouting, claiming the bad weather forced him to smoke inside. When I mentioned the contract he'd signed agreeing not to smoke, he denied it existed. I turned to our filing cabinet to retrieve his signed copy. That's when everything changed. While I was looking down, he lunged over the counter and grabbed my hair. Pure instinct took over. I broke free from his grip and, acting in self-defense, landed a punch square on his nose. Blood poured onto the counter and floor. He stared at me in shock, called me a crazy bitch, and fled. I called the police immediately. They arrived as I was cleaning up the blood. Turns out Mr. Buttface had called them too, claiming I'd attacked him unprovoked. The officers, familiar with his history of trouble, believed my version of events. The next morning, everything got worse. The hotel owner messaged me about a nasty review from Mr. Buttface, who described being attacked by an angry black lady. I sent the owner the police report and explained what happened. His response? I should have de-escalated the situation and that it was my fault. When I asked what I should have done differently, he suggested I shouldn't have defended myself. I've never written a resignation notice faster. The only reason I didn't quit immediately was consideration for my amazing manager. She already works multiple 16-hour shifts weekly. If I left without notice, she'd face a 56-hour weekend shift. I agreed to finish my scheduled shifts, but that's it. The owner tried backpedaling when he realized I was leaving. With only 5 employees total, losing anyone hurts. I told him clearly, I won't work for someone who values image over employee safety. He sent multiple messages since, but I haven't read them. After my final shift tomorrow, I'll only return to collect my last paycheck. Sometimes standing up for yourself means walking away. No job is worth sacrificing your dignity and safety. Story 9. Working at a conference hotel means dealing with high occupancy situations. That morning, management had been clear. No late checkouts today, period. We were completely sold out with multiple conferences in-house. Enter our elite tier guest, requesting a 4 p.m. checkout. I explained the situation politely. I'm sorry, but due to full occupancy, we can't accommodate late checkouts today. However, we'd be happy to store your luggage, and you're welcome to use our lounge until your departure. Simple enough, right? Wrong. He started the elite member mantra. But I'm a high-tier member. I tried again. Yes, sir, I understand, but with multiple conferences today. I'm a high-tier member. We're fully booked. Did you hear me? I'm a high-tier member. Round and round we went, like a customer service merry-go-round. Nothing changed. The hotel was still full. Physics still existed. Time still moved forward. Finally, exhausted from our verbal loop, I reached for my last resort. I printed out the loyalty program's official late checkout policy and presented it to him. You'd think I'd handed him a parking ticket. Really? He exploded. Do you have to print this out? Well, sir, after our 15-minute circular conversation, apparently I did. Sometimes when words fail, paper speaks. I mean, what else could I have done? Invented extra rooms? Mastered time travel? Sometimes the answer is just no, even for high-tier members. Story 10. Part 1. It's 11 a.m., checkout time, and I'm swamped. A guest approaches and asks when breakfast ends. 9:30, I tell him. They're cleaning the breakfast room now. He says okay, and then, get this, walks straight toward the breakfast room anyway. The housekeeper in there doesn't speak English, so I call after him before she has to deal with this situation. When he returns, I repeat myself. Breakfast is over. The door's only open for cleaning. His response? I need to speak to a manager. Sorry, sir, manager returns Tuesday. Then comes the sob story. His family upstairs, late arrival last night. Couldn't we please extend them the courtesy? You know, the courtesy of magically making breakfast appear an hour and a half after it's ended and been cleaned up. He finally gives up and heads to the coffee station. But here's the kicker. While making his coffee, he gets on his phone and loudly announces that he didn't even want hotel breakfast and dining out is much better anyway. I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Part 2. The Room Puzzle. Just when I thought my day couldn't get more entertaining, in comes another guest at 1 p.m. He needs his rooms side by side, first floor, right now. Small problem, we're still cleaning from a busy night. I check what's available for early check-in, no first floor rooms, nothing side by side. He tries arguing with me. I suggest coming back at actual check-in time. He doesn't like that answer. But you can't argue with simple facts. The rooms he wants don't exist right now. Then he has a brilliant idea. He'll take whatever's available now and move to connecting rooms at 3 p.m. I explain he'd have to pay for 3 rooms in that case. More arguing follows until I point out the obvious. You can't use 2 rooms for the price of 1. To my absolute shock, that actually made sense to him. Sometimes logic wins, even if you have to explain it like a math problem. The funny thing about working the front desk? You get to watch people argue with reality itself, and reality always wins. Story 11. At our boutique inn, we keep things simple but elegant. Yes, we're pet-friendly, but after some interesting experiences, we've narrowed that down to dogs only. Seems straightforward enough, right? My morning started with a note from our night auditor about a rather unusual encounter. A woman had tried to book a room using a gift card, which we don't accept, and mentioned bringing several cats, which we don't allow. When told no on both counts, she'd thrown a fit before storming out. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Around 7:30, just as I was settling in with my breakfast and weekend emails, she called. She started pleasantly enough, but when I explained our policies about gift cards and cats, something strange happened. The conversation stretched into a 45-minute monologue. She wove quite a tale, moving back to the area, meeting some guy, only had $500 to her name but wanted to stay for a week plus. Could we set up a special rate just for her? The conversation went in circles, like a cat chasing its tail. Every time I tried to steer us back to the simple fact that we don't allow cats, she'd veer off into another tangent. Finally, when I suggested she use Google to find cat-friendly accommodations, since no hotel in our area accepts them, something snapped. She let out this eerie, humorless laugh and launched into a tirade about pet discrimination and how cats are just as much of a pet as dogs are. Try getting a word in with someone who thinks they're leading a feline civil rights movement. Each time I opened my mouth, she'd cut me off. Eventually, I just said, "Have a good day," and hung up mid-rant. But oh, she wasn't done. She tried calling back 8 times. I had to mark her number as spam in our phone system and warn the morning staff. If she shows up, don't engage, just call the police. You know those moments when you think you've seen everything in the hotel business? That's usually when something like this happens to remind you that there's always a new kind of crazy waiting around the corner. At least I can say this. Working at an inn is never boring. Though sometimes, just once, I wouldn't mind a dull morning with my breakfast. Story 12. Working the front desk at our wine country hotel in California means dealing with all sorts of people. Last Veterans Day weekend was particularly busy. Our check-in time is 4 p.m., but you know how it goes. Guests arrive early, hoping to get in sooner, especially those with mobile keys. Our housekeeping team was running behind. We'd been fully booked since Friday, and with elite guests having 4 p.m. late checkouts, things were backed up. Pretty normal situation, but try explaining that to some guests. At 3:56 p.m., this guest who booked through a popular website, let's call it Exquisite, came to check in. I explained his room wasn't ready yet, but offered to pre-check him in. He didn't like that answer and walked away with his family. Trying to smooth things over, I offered a food credit for our bar. Big mistake. He snatched it from my hand and snapped, "What does a drink have to do with my room?" I explained it was just for the inconvenience. He rolled his eyes. I walked away awkwardly, then desperately called housekeeping, hoping to find any ready room to put him in. At 4:10 p.m., he returned, demanding to know if his room was ready. I explained we were still waiting on housekeeping, but would have his keys ready the moment it was done. That's when he started yelling. Check-in is at 4 p.m. Why isn't it ready? I tried explaining about being fully booked since Friday and housekeeping catching up. His response? A cold stare and so? I apologized and suggested he have a seat while I checked the room's status. He kept repeating that it should be clean because it was 4 p.m. When I explained I couldn't release a dirty room, he cut me off. Don't talk back to me. You do not have the right to speak to me like that. I was stunned. I hadn't raised my voice or been rude. My coworker stepped in, telling him to calm down and that he shouldn't speak to front desk agents that way. I walked away, letting my coworker handle it. The whole thing left me wondering, was I the problem? Could I have handled it differently? And most importantly, can we actually refuse to check in guests who act this aggressive? Sometimes in hospitality, you do everything by the book and still end up feeling like you did something wrong. But maybe the real question isn't whether we can refuse service to aggressive guests, but whether we should have to put up with such behavior in the first place. Story 13. During my 4 years at a palace hotel in St. Barths, I handled every imaginable complaint as guest experience manager. That's the fancy title they give to someone who professionally gets screamed at all day. And I was good at it. Never lost my temper, not once. That's actually why they gave me the job. But there was one time I almost snapped. It was high season, when New York's elite descends upon St. Barths. 3 couples arrived one afternoon. Typical Park Avenue crowd, obscenely wealthy, all part of the same social circle that treats our island like their personal December playground. As often happens with our small planes from St. Martin, one couple's luggage didn't make it. The airline always delivers missing bags first thing next morning. No big deal, right? Wrong. The wife, let's call her Sarah, started screaming at my receptionist. I stepped in to explain the situation. Why is my luggage not here? I calmly explained the situation with the airline. You don't understand, she shrieked. I'm from New York, I get my stuff. I tried explaining that even New York privilege couldn't make planes fly at night. That's when she went nuclear. "You are fucking worthless, you piece of shit. I don't fucking care what you have to do, but you get me my luggage now." Her husband sat nearby, saying nothing, as if his wife's meltdown was just background music. Being good at my job, I called everyone, the airline owner, customs in St. Martin, even boat charters. But the luggage was locked in customs until morning. When reality finally penetrated her bubble, she launched into the ultimate rich girl tantrum. "What am I even going to wear tonight? I can't even go to a restaurant." She started crying while still pepper spraying me with insults. So I played my ace card, offered her our hotel driver and private car to go shopping for Louboutins and a dress, all transportation complimentary. She grabbed her husband's credit card and stormed off without a word of thanks, still muttering about my incompetence. As she left, still spewing venom, I looked at her husband with what I hoped was a clear, "Why on earth would you want that to be your wife?" expression. This man, this poor soul, looked at me and shrugged. "Hey, happy wife, happy life." That was it. My breaking point. 4 years of keeping cool through threats, insults, and endless entitled tantrums, and this man's casual acceptance of his wife's behavior nearly made me lose it. I walked away before I could say what I was thinking. Sometimes in luxury hospitality, the best service you can provide is the words you don't say. Story 14. Sometimes you walk into your shift and immediately know it's going to be an interesting day. When I arrived at 12:30, my maintenance guy greeted me with a fire alarm. Not a beeping one, mind you, but one physically ripped from the ceiling. Our first theory seemed logical enough. We spotted a burn ring on the stovetop and figured maybe a guest had burned some food, panicked, and yanked out the alarm. Simple explanation, right? Oh, how wrong we were. Here's what actually happened. The guests had stripped their own bed before leaving. Normal enough. But then, and this is where reality takes a sharp left turn into the twilight zone, they left the sheets on top of a turned-on stove. Our houseman discovered this masterpiece of questionable decision-making. He walked in to strip the beds, saw they were already stripped, and turned to find the sheets on the stove. Not thinking much of it yet, he went to move them. Instant regret. Smoke billowed out from underneath, and in a moment of panic, he became the one who ripped out the fire alarm. Can't really blame him for that reaction. I took pictures of the burned sheets for evidence. My manager sent them up the chain of command. The guests got hit with a damage fee, obviously. But the bigger question remains, what were they thinking? Was this attempted arson? Peak stupidity? Who looks at a stove and thinks, "You know what would look great on there?" Bed sheets. Accident or not, they put an entire hotel's worth of people at risk. Though I have to admit, if they were aiming for extra crispy sheets, they definitely succeeded. I've seen some strange things working at hotels, but sheets on a hot stove, that's a new one for the books. Story 15. As innkeeper of a boutique property, I take pride in our locally sourced amenities. Everything from our coffee to our pastries comes from nearby artisans. Our handmade soaps and bath products are particularly special. They work wonders and smell amazing. Yes, they're pricey in our gift shop, but that's what happens when things are actually handmade locally. So I wasn't exactly shocked when the first incident occurred. A guest had convinced our non-English speaking housekeeper, twice, that they'd run out of toiletries. 3 of each product mysteriously found their way into her luggage. Later, she called our night attendant, furious about being charged for her souvenir collection. When I called her back, she wouldn't even admit to taking them. Just threatened to dispute the charges and hung up on me. Charming. But wait. The day wasn't done with me yet. My head housekeeper arrived looking like she'd seen a ghost. She needed me to charge another room for damages. The photos she showed me were something else. These guests had apparently decided their morning coffee belonged everywhere except in their cups. The mattress, bedding, pillows, all soaked in coffee. And then there were the 3 large red stains on the sheets. Now, I'm 98% sure that wasn't coffee, if you catch my drift. I added a substantial cleaning fee to their bill. Haven't heard back directly, but they've already left a review complaining about being overcharged after checkout. You know what I don't understand? These same guests who rave about our amenities and service are often the ones who seem determined to take advantage of or destroy them. From soap thieves to coffee vandals, sometimes I wonder if running a boutique inn is actually running a daycare for adults. The joys of hospitality, where every day brings a new adventure in Why Are People Like This? Thank you for listening to these tales from the front desk. Comment your thoughts below.